The train pulled away in a cloud of steam and dust, leaving behind a near-empty station and a woman who hadn't spoken in 3 days. She stood alone beside a wooden bench, skirts stiff with trail dust, hands wrapped around a carpet bag that held everything she had left. 2 dresses, a comb, and a letter she couldn't bring herself to read again. Her face was bruised just beneath the cheekbone, not fresh, but not yet faded. No one in town had asked how it got there. They knew, and they didn't care. The sheriff had walked her here himself that morning, eyes cold, voice low. "This is where you wait. He'll come, and you'll go. That's the deal." Now only silence answered the wind, until the sound of a horse's slow hooves echoed against the wooden boards. She looked up. A giant Apache man dismounted from a black gelding, his long coat dusted in trail grit, a curved knife at his hip. His presence swallowed the space around him. Quiet, solid, and absolute. He didn't ask her name, didn't ask if she was the one. He just looked at her, studied her face for a long moment, and said in a voice like gravel over fire, "You're mine now." She flinched, but didn't move. He took the carpet bag from her hand gently, like lifting a wounded bird, then turned and began walking. No orders, no questions, just a silent command to follow. And she did, because there was no one left to stay for. As they rode out of town, not a single soul looked up from their porches. She glanced back once and saw the sheriff at the edge of the stable, arms folded, watching, smiling. That night they camped near a dry creek bed under cottonwoods that whispered in the dusk. He made a fire, handed her a blanket, and never touched her. She watched him from across the flames, trying to place the story behind his silence. He didn't act like a man who wanted a prize. He acted like a man fulfilling a promise he didn't believe in, and that scared her more than anything, because she knew what it was to be owned. And this didn't feel like that. It felt like something older, something wrapped in shame. She lay down with the dog-eared letter still pressed inside her coat, unread but heavy, and wondered what price had been paid to send her away like cargo, and who this silent man really was. Somewhere in the dark, coyotes howled, but he didn't stir, and for the first time in weeks, neither did her fear. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of low chanting, soft, rhythmic, like a prayer spoken to the land itself. The Apache sat cross-legged by the fire, eyes closed, palms open to the rising sun. She didn't interrupt. She watched. In the daylight, his size was even more striking, but it was the scars that caught her. Thin white lines across his hands, a jagged burn down the side of his neck. Marks of someone who'd lived through something brutal and survived without explaining it. When he finally opened his eyes, he simply handed her a tin cup of coffee and said nothing. It was she who broke the silence. "Why me?" Her voice came out cracked, like it hadn't been used in a long time. He didn't answer at first. Then, because they owed. That was all, but it landed heavy. They rode west through scrubland and ridgelines, avoiding towns, speaking little. She began to piece things together from fragments, the way he stayed off the roads, the way his eyes narrowed at any distant dust cloud. He wasn't bringing her to his people. He was keeping her away from someone else. By the second night, curiosity outweighed fear. "Who made the deal?" she asked. He looked at her for a long time. "Your husband," he said, "traded you to settle a blood debt." Her stomach turned. She should have known. The bruises, the nights he never came home sober, the way he talked about Indians like animals, until they showed up, masked and silent, one night at the ranch. She remembered now. That whisper in her ear while she lay on the floor bleeding. He'll pay. But instead of killing him, they had taken her. and now she was beginning to understand why. "So, I'm payment," she said, bitter. "Like cattle." He didn't flinch. "You were given," he said. "But you are not mine." "Then why did you say it?" she almost asked, but the words stuck. That night they camped near a stream, and for the first time she sat beside him at the fire instead of across. "What's your name?" she asked. "They call me Hakan," he said. "It means fire." She looked at him for a long time. "They called me Clara once," she said quietly, "before he broke it out of me." He nodded, as if he'd known already. In the silence that followed, the distance between them shifted. Not vanished, but thinned. She didn't trust him, but she no longer feared him. And in a world that had measured her worth in what men could take, that felt dangerously close to grace, the third day brought wind, hard and cold, scraping across the plains like it carried judgment. Clara pulled the shawl tighter around her shoulders as Hakan led them through a narrow valley scarred by old wagon ruts and forgotten battles. The silence between them had grown thicker, not hostile, just weighted with unspoken truths neither knew how to name. They reached a ridge just before dusk, where the land dropped into a sunlit hollow framed by rock. Below, a single cabin stood with smoke curling from the chimney and 2 horses tied at the post. Hakan's posture stiffened. Clara followed his gaze and saw what he did. 2 riders outside, armed. "Friends?" she asked, his jaw clenched. "Old ones, not now." Instead of heading down, he led her along the ridge, circling the cabin until it vanished from view. They made camp under an outcrop. No fire, just dried meat and silence. Clara ate little. She kept staring at him. "Why not go there? You knew them." "They know me as I was," he said. "That man would not keep you safe." "And the man you are now?" she asked. He looked at her then, and for the first time, the fire in his name showed in his eyes. "Still becoming." Later that night, she couldn't sleep. The stars were too loud, the past too close. She reached into her coat and pulled out the letter, the one her husband had handed her that morning before riding off. "In case they don't want you," he'd said, like it was livestock being returned. Her hands trembled as she opened it, and then her breath caught. It wasn't from him. It was from the sheriff. "Hakan will take you. He owes me blood, and this is how he repays it. You'll be safer with him than with what's coming. I never liked the trade, but justice has its own weight." She lowered the paper slowly. "You didn't choose this either," she whispered. Hakan sat a few feet away, sharpening a blade in the dark. "I thought they were sending someone who needed punishing," he said without turning, "not someone who already had been." Her eyes welled. "So why take me?" "Because leaving you was worse." She looked down at the letter again. It no longer felt like a curse. It felt like a reckoning. The wind shifted, warmer now. Hakan rose, walked to the edge of the outcrop, and stared at the horizon. "There are men following," he said quietly. 3 days behind." "Yours?" "No," he said. "Yours." And just like that, the story changed from one of repayment to one of survival. And maybe something more. By morning, the sky had turned brittle blue, and the wind carried the scent of horse sweat and distance. Hakan didn't speak as he packed their gear, but Clara could feel the shift in him. Tense, coiled, like a storm inside skin. She didn't ask where they were going. She only asked how far behind the riders were. "Close enough to smell the fire," he said. They cut south through gullies and broken ravines, every hoofstep swallowed by dry dirt and hush. Clara held her breath as they passed animal bones half buried in the sand, and the quiet stretched so long it felt alive. Around noon, Håkan stopped near a stand of twisted cottonwoods and dismounted. "We wait here," he said. "Why?" "Because running forever makes you forget why you started." He crouched and began digging a shallow hole with his knife. Clara watched as he placed a flint, a piece of folded paper, and something small wrapped in leather inside. Then he buried it. "What was that?" she asked. "My past," he said, "or what was left of it." "You think it'll stay buried?" He looked up at her. "Only if I live long enough to build something better." Before she could answer, the dog growled low in its throat. A dust cloud shimmered to the north. Riders, 2, maybe 3, dark outlines against the light. Clara's heart pounded. "Do we run?" "We draw them in," Håkan said. "I know their kind. They don't shoot unless they're sure." He handed her a pistol, not heavy, but cold in her hand. "Can you use it?" "I've had to," she said. "Not well, but hard." He nodded. "Then aim with truth, not rage." They hid behind a split boulder just off the trail, horses tied below the ridge. The riders approached slowly, weapons visible, faces covered in dust and shadow. One of them called out, "We're just here for the girl." "Trade her back and you walk." Håkan stepped into view, tall and still. "She's not yours to trade," the man laughed. "Neither was she to begin with. Then why send cowards to take her?" The air cracked as a rifle fired, not at Håkan, but at the rock near Clara's head. She fired back without thinking. The man dropped. The others fled. Håkan didn't chase them. He just walked to where Clara stood, shaking. "You hit him," he said. "I didn't mean to. Doesn't matter. You stood." She looked at her hands, at the trembling gone. "I didn't feel afraid." "That's what they fear now," he said. And as the dust settled around them, she realized she was no longer the one being hunted. She was becoming someone worth protecting and someone dangerous to cross. They rode until the sun hung low, bleeding orange over the hills, and came upon a half-buried cabin nestled into the base of a jagged bluff. It looked long abandoned, porch half-collapsed, door hanging askew, one shutter dangling by a single nail. But Håkan dismounted without hesitation. "We stay here tonight," he said. Clara looked around uneasily. "Whose place was this?" "Mine," he answered. "Before I became useful to men who don't believe in forgiveness." Inside, the air smelled of dust and old wood. Clara traced a fingertip over the wall, pausing on a carving, 3 lines crossed by a 4th. "What's this?" she asked. "My brothers," Håkan said. "All gone." She said nothing, only nodded. They swept out the corner room, cleared a space by the hearth, and kindled a fire from bark and dry grass. Håkan found a tin box beneath the floorboards with tobacco, matches, and a folded cloth that made his hands go still when he touched it. "You okay?" Clara asked softly. He looked at her, then slowly opened the cloth to reveal a child's beaded moccasin, no longer than his palm. "My daughter," he said, voice thin as smoke. "They took her name before I could give it to her." Clara didn't ask who. She knew the kind of pain that didn't need retelling. She knelt beside him and placed her hand on his. "I'm sorry." He blinked once, then carefully rewrapped the cloth. "I brought you here because no one knows it exists, not even the ones who claim to own me." "They don't," she said, firmer than she expected. "Not anymore." Night fell heavy over the canyon, stars buried in clouds. As they sat by the fire, Clara told him pieces of her own story, how her husband gambled with cattle, whiskey, and eventually her, how the last thing he said before leaving her at the station was, "At least now you'll be someone else's burden." Håkan's jaw tensed, but he didn't speak. Instead, he pulled something from his satchel, a thin leather cord with a turquoise bead. You don't owe me anything, she said. This isn't payment, he replied. It's proof you belong somewhere, even if just here. She took it in both hands, tears hot and sudden. For the first time in years, she felt less like a thing passed between men and more like a person choosing where to stand. Outside, a coyote howled, long and low, but it no longer sounded like a warning. It sounded like a promise that the hunted don't stay hunted forever. The next night brought a stranger. Clara was outside collecting dry branches when she saw the flicker of movement against the ridge. Just a silhouette at first, tall, wiry, one hand resting too casually on the butt of a rifle. She called for Hakan, and he stepped out before she could finish the word. No fear, just stillness. The stranger descended slowly, eyes sweeping the camp, then settled on Clara. Didn't think I'd find you again, he said with a crooked smile. Her blood ran cold. It was her husband's cousin, Aaron, a man who once cornered her in the barn with whiskey on his breath and lies in his eyes. You followed them, Hakan said evenly. Aaron didn't blink. Town's been talking. Said the Apache took her, but I figured she went quiet. Like always. Clara felt her stomach twist. I didn't go with anyone, she said, voice low. I was sent away like cattle. Aaron laughed. Well, I'm here to take back what's ours. She's not yours, Hakan said. Wasn't yours to trade, and she's not yours to claim. You think this ends with one dead cousin and a cabin in the hills? Aaron spat. That man owed money all over Dakota territory. They'll keep coming. Hakan stepped forward. Then let them. Clara moved beside him. You think I'll ride back with you like nothing happened? She said. I bled for that man. I vanished for your debt. Now I know who I am. Aaron's gaze shifted. Not just annoyance now. Unease. You're talking like one of them, he sneered. No, she said. I'm talking like someone who survived you. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Aaron did something Clara didn't expect. He turned and walked away. They'll send worse, he muttered. Soon. Hakan didn't lower his guard until the man was gone from sight. Later, after the fire was lit and the dark curled around them like a second skin, Clara sat with her knees drawn close. You could have killed him, she said. But you didn't. Killing is easy, Hakan said. But letting someone live with their own shame, that stays longer. Clara nodded, the truth of it settling in her bones. He'll bring others, she said. Maybe. Then why stay here? Because running makes you a shadow, he replied, but standing makes you a name. She looked at the firelight dancing across his face and realized, for the first time, he wasn't just a shield between her and the past. He was a future she might choose. Not given, not traded. Chosen. And that made all the difference. By morning, Clara was gathering water from the creek, her boots soaked through and fingers stiff from cold, but her mind sharper than it had been in weeks. Every word Aaron had said echoed like hoofbeats in her chest, reminders of how easily men laid claim to what they never earned. She knelt to fill the canteen, then paused. A reflection flickered just beneath the surface, not hers, someone standing behind her. She spun, heart thudding, only to find Hakan, arms crossed, watching. You move like someone hunted, he said gently. Old habits, she replied. Hard to drop. You don't have to drop them, he said. Just don't let them lead. They rode out to scout the ridgeline, watching for signs of more riders. The cabin was too exposed now. Clara suggested they leave, but Hakan shook his head. If we leave now, we live on the run. Always. I'd rather make them step into the open. And if they bring more guns? She asked. Then we teach them there are things more dangerous than bullets. They returned to the cabin before dusk. Clara dug into the supplies and found a bundle of cloth. Inside, a delicate white shawl edged with beadwork. She held it up. Yours. My wife's, Hakan said quietly, before she was taken. Clara folded it carefully. Do you still wear grief like armor? He looked away. Only when I want to feel what I've lost. She stepped closer. Then maybe you should wear what you still have. Her voice trembled, but she held her ground. That night she took down the broken shutter and carved something into the wood with the tip of her knife. What cannot be bought? Hakan saw it, said nothing, but nodded once in approval. As the fire burned low, they sat closer than before, the silence no longer aching but warm. You could have let me go, she whispered. Back at the station. I could have, he said, but I looked at you, and I saw someone already carrying the fire. She blinked hard. I didn't think there was anything left to carry. That's the thing about women like you, he said. The world keeps trading you like coin, and yet you keep rising like something forged. She reached into her pocket and handed him the sheriff's letter. This started as a debt, she said, but I think it's ending as a choice. He didn't speak, just folded the letter slowly and placed it in the flames. And as the fire consumed it, Clara understood. This was not the end of what she was. It was the start of who she would become. The storm rolled in just after midnight, dry lightning flashing over the bluffs, thunder shaking the timbers of the cabin as wind howled through every crack. Clara stood at the window, watching shadows stretch across the hills. Hakan was outside, walking the ridge with his rifle slung low, not patrolling out of fear, but principle. He wasn't guarding her. He was standing beside her. When he returned, his coat dusted with grit, his voice was low. 3 men, camped a mile out, waiting for dawn. Clara felt her breath catch. Aaron? One of them, maybe more. She nodded. Then I think it's time I gave them back what they paid for. Hakan frowned. You're not going to them. No, she said. I'm going to tell them the trade's been broken. At first, he resisted. Said it was a trap. Said no one walks into a snake's nest to scold it. But Clara wasn't the woman who had stood mute at the train station. Not anymore. At first light, they rode together down the ridge, both dressed like warriors. Him in his father's vest and medicine beads, her in the beaded shawl she once thought she had no right to wear. The men stood when they saw them. Aaron's face twisted into a grin. Look who found her voice, he sneered. Clara dismounted without flinching. I'm not yours, she said. I never was. You traded me like meat, but I'm here to say the deal is over. We'll see what the Land Council says about that, one of the men said. You think they care who a savage claims? Hakan stepped forward. You came for a woman, he said, voice like thunder, but you'll leave with a scar. Aaron laughed, reaching for his rifle, but Clara was faster. She raised her pistol and fired a warning shot into the dirt at his feet. You think I haven't learned how to aim? She said, steady. You think I won't do what no man's done for me yet? Fight back? The men hesitated, eyes darting. Hakan raised his hand. Leave now, and the land forgets you were here. Stay, and it remembers your blood. The silence stretched. Then Aaron turned his horse and rode away. The others followed. No shots, no blood, just thunder rolling behind them. Clara exhaled. Her hands shook, but she didn't lower the pistol until the dust faded. You didn't need me to protect you, Hakan said. She looked at him. No, she said, but I needed you to remind me I could protect myself. And that, more than anything, was the beginning of her freedom. For 2 days, no one came. The wind settled, and the land breathed as if exhaling something it had held too long. Clara swept the cabin floors like she meant to stay, each stroke of the broom more like a declaration than a chore. Hakan rebuilt the broken porch rail, his hands moving with quiet purpose, carving cedar stakes and retying the fence wire as if they were mending more than wood. There were no words between them about what had happened. No need. It had already passed through them like a storm that failed to break what mattered most. That evening, Clara walked to the creek alone. She dipped her hands in the cool water, letting it run through her fingers like thread through cloth. Her reflection stared back, a woman marked by dust and memory, but not by shame. Behind her, a soft tread on the stones. Hakan approached and stood beside her, holding something wrapped in oilcloth. He unfolded it carefully, revealing a necklace of raw turquoise and copper. "This belonged to my mother," he said. "She wore it when she spoke before the circle of elders, when she made the men listen." Clara didn't move. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because tomorrow," he said, "we return to my people." She turned to him. "Will they accept me?" "They will accept the truth," he said, "and you carry it now." She looked at the necklace. "I don't know who I am among them." "You're not what was traded," he said. "You are what was never taken." That night, they sat beneath the stars without a fire, not out of fear but reverence. The stars stretched wide above them, and for once, Clara didn't feel like a small thing beneath them. She felt placed. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked. Hakan was quiet for a while. "Regret is for men who had a choice," he said. "I had only what I could carry. And now I carry you." Her breath caught, not because she was surprised, but because it felt so fiercely earned. She reached over and placed her hand on his chest. "Then let me carry you too." The silence between them bloomed like firelight without flame. No promises, no ownership, just something shared, something chosen. And for the first time since she stepped off that train, she realized she wasn't just surviving a story. She was writing her own. Tomorrow there would be questions. There might be judgment. But tonight, she belonged to herself. And that was a power even the men who traded her could never touch. They arrived at the Apache village just after dawn, the rising sun casting golden light over the sandstone cliffs like a blessing. Children peeked from behind canvas doors, elders gathered at the edge of the fire circle, and silence stretched as every eye fixed on Clara. She dismounted slowly, not hiding, not flinching. Hakan stood beside her, but he didn't shield her. He stood with her. One of the older women stepped forward, long gray braids trailing down her chest. Her eyes were sharp, not unkind, but searching. "Who is she?" the woman asked. Hakan answered, not with her name, but with her truth. She was traded without her will. She was beaten, broken, silenced, and still she stood. The woman's eyes moved to Clara. "And now?" Clara lifted her chin. "Now I speak. Now I fight. Now I choose." A murmur passed through the gathered circle. The old woman nodded once, then reached into her satchel and pulled out a strip of deerskin with a single black feather sewn to it. She tied it gently around Clara's wrist. "Then now, you belong," she said. That night, they lit the ceremonial fire, and for the first time in her life, Clara felt the heat not as something to endure, but as something to gather around. The people shared food, laughter, and songs that Clara didn't know the words to, but she understood them all the same. The language of survival needs no translation. Hakan sat beside her, shoulders relaxed for the first time since she met him. When the songs quieted, the elder woman rose and addressed the circle. "Once, a man tried to buy her silence, another tried to buy her life. But she is not for sale. She is not debt. She is not burden. She is fire that walked through ash." She turned to Clara. Do you carry a name? Clara hesitated. Then she said it, aloud, for the first time in years. Clara. The woman nodded. Clara no longer traded. Clara no longer hidden. Clara, who burned and did not vanish. The crowd repeated the phrase softly, like a blessing. And for the first time, Clara believed it. Later, beneath the stars, Hakan reached for her hand. Do you still carry that letter? He asked. She smiled. No, she said. I carry something better. She placed his mother's necklace around her neck and whispered, This time, no one gives me away. In the hush that followed, it was not the fire that glowed brightest. It was the name she now carried, her own, earned, chosen, and it would never burn.